correct?
Yes, correct. So you can see this third line down, this $45,000 last year is now zero this year. Unfortunately, Munis, if there's a zero in any column, the percentage change is a zero. But if you look at Trent's department in total, it is going down the 12% because of that position was moved to land use.
So there'll just be an offset increase in land use. We're not hiring anybody new. It's just reflecting, frankly, what work has been going on anyway. And so that's an adjustment that we'll make that going forward, it'll be kind of resolved in next year's budget.
So it was just hitting Trent's budget in the past. Is that why we're moving it? I'm not sure I understand.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Quick question for Trent. Trent, you said you're going to get grant money to do the hire a nurse for contact tracing. When will that person be hired? Or did you hire?
Hey, John, how you doing? Good evening.
Good, how are you?
Actually, I've already received the money for the nurse. I have a candidate who I'm going to be putting on board soon. But just trying to get the rest of her training credentials as it relates to contact tracing. But we received that money already. We've already been granted that money. All the grant money we've received.
Good, and you got the person hopefully ready to go. Thanks, Trent.
Absolutely, John.
Yeah,
And Trent, just a quick question. Is there an explanation for the 45 going to 95 in the revised budget versus actual?
Let's see. Oh,
well, that's third
That
line.
would be a reclass. We need our salaries right now in Munis. We're having a little bit of a hiccup. The actual column should be the actuals, but that will be corrected in your next Board of Finance monthly meeting.
Okay.
I hear you're loving Munis, Stacy.
I'm going on mute.
I think, oh, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I just have a quickie for Trent. So the nurse, the contract tracer that's being funded by a grant, will that go away once hopefully all this COVID stuff is gone?
It's a 3-year grant.
Three-year grant,
3-year grant that it's called the ELC grant, Phil. So, ideally we hope that that's going to be continuing funding. At the point where it's not, then maybe that's something I would have to revisit with you guys or the Board of Finance. And this nurse is not just contact tracing. She's going to be essentially a public health nurse. It's just the contact tracing is just going to be one definition of her job description.
Okay. Is she going to be bringing any vaccines with her?
Yeah, she's going to be expected to work our vaccination clinics that are currently ongoing. And actually, she's already working them. So, just not under a Madison employee.
I'll be right over.
Thanks, Trent.
Welcome.
Okay.
She might be delivering your dinner, Fillmore, and she'll bring the shot with her.
Oh, even better, even better.
She's bringing you a free dinner, yeah.
That's not what I meant by shots, though.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Fillmore wasn't thinking a COVID shot then either. Who we kidding?
Oh, it's a COVID. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So it looks like we're good. There's no additional requests here. So maybe we can move on to technology. I know
Thank you.
Art's in the waiting room. Thank you, Trent, for everything you're doing.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that
What page are we on? Sorry, Stace.
60.
61.
Thank you.
so this is the staffing profile for the tech department. I'll remind everyone it's a shared department between the town and the school district. And the town contributes 50% share for each of the 3 people listed, which is Rita Boland, our web design application support specialist. We've got Steve Fust, who's assistant manager, and myself. So it hasn't changed in going on 20 years now. So here we go. It's just been a few different names here and there. There are basically no changes with the exception of professional technical services, which I've asked for a $6,000 increase. and that is for the annual support for Everbridge, which is part of the communications plan. It's the Madison alerts platform that's in use. And everything else is pretty much status quo there. A good portion of my budget really is handled through the CIP process with capital money. And in that process, which I believe the two increases that I had asked for were actually moved forward last night. I had a $30,000 increase in the obsolescence replacement, which is basically hardware funding, and a $10,000 increase in the small application software account. Both of those are in support of a more mobile workforce and more e-government public access type application implementation as we go. So the obsolescence hardware for the town side was $75,000. It was 45, moving up to 75. And then the application software was 15,000, moving up to 25,000. So I mean, those are basically the only increases that we talked about. And as I said, the bulk of that was really in the CIP piece. Did some pretty good projects this year, and we'll just gloss over the Munis comment and say that's been moving along and it's basically implemented. A couple of hiccups, and I can't stress how important a role the finance department and HR departments, they really ran the whole thing. They did a phenomenal job, and we made some pretty hard deadlines. So still recovering, I think, from those departments are still recovering, I think, but that was a very big project, as you all know. We did some good obsolescence replacement work as well, and we improved our firewall and our servers, and we did a number of other strategic moves backing up our internet connection. We've got 2 backup circuits now, and I think it's been a pretty productive year, I have to say, with everybody moving to so much remote access and remote work. So put it up to any questions.
I have a question. You mentioned the extra money for the Everbridge, and that's because the state got very chintzy with their alert system, and we had to go get our own.
Well, I think that the state kind of really emphasized the use of theirs only for life and death type agencies. So I think that while we were able to get by with it at the beginning of the pandemic piece of things, that was one thing, but it became, they became less gracious about using the system for what they consider to be non-life threatening, but more informational updates. So the information updates, we really need to use a system that we actually do have to contribute to. So,
yeah. And they actually were losing subscribers because, and it just wasn't our town, but this was happening across the state, and that concerned them. That they really wanted to make sure that they had a way to reach as many people as possible in life-threatening situations. And so the people were unsubscribing who just didn't want to get, some of the general more COVID and things like that. And so they really cracked down. I will say that my understanding is we had this a number of years ago through a grant, and it was decided not to move forward because they didn't think there was going to be a need for it. Guilford actually continued to use this. So they have, I think, over 10,000 subscribers now to their system, and they've been able to use this, throughout the pandemic. So, and other towns are doing the same thing. They're either purchasing it or they're, utilizing it a lot more if they had it in the past. So it's kind of what a lot of towns are trying to move towards.
Thank you.
If I can just make one comment, it's a Stacy. Art talked about his increase in the CIP, the projects, but you can see the funding on here remained at the 140. The CIP request for the funding into his fund is going up to 150. So in your additional budget request section, you will see the $10,000 for technology. I just wanted to clarify that if anybody had any questions on that.
Thanks, Stacey.
Is that to be added to the budget book?
It is in the additional budget request section, Bruce.
Oh, okay, because at the end of this one, there aren't any additionals.
Yeah.
Yes, the CIP was treated differently. For the operating budget, they will be included in the individual departments, but the CIP is just summarized in the additional budget request summary on the bottom.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Art? No? I think we're ahead of the game here. All right, moving on. Thank you very much, Art. Appreciate
you.
it. And
Thanks.
lots of
Thanks,
accolades to your department. I know this has been an incredibly challenging year for you guys, and you've been doing an amazing job, rising to the occasion. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Next one is Selectman's office.
Human resources. Oh, no, you're right. I'm sorry. Yep, you're right. Oh, God.
That's okay. So this actually has, remind me, we actually have included in here the increase. There's really minimal changes to this budget. And it should only be like the additional budget request, correct?
Yes, the only change to our department budget is the additional request in holiday observances for the downtown lightscape. So this year we split that cost for the lighting downtown with the EDC, and they for the upcoming year, they've asked that we include that in the selectman's office budget in full. So what we've done is we've budgeted the total amount that we would need to do exactly the same lightscape that we did this year, but also including the library and the Scranton gazebo. So that $11,000 increase would cover everything that was done this year, plus those 2 additional locations.
Why wouldn't the EDC still split it with us? Just out of curiosity, going forward.
Well, I think my view on that is, this was kind of an initiative that they were launching. They just have a very small budget that they use for different projects. And if we decide this is a community, what we want to support going forward, then it made more sense to have it fall into the annual budget.
Right, and their budget is intended more for promotional type activities, so advertising and things like that. This really kind of falls outside of it.
And this was something I will say that I've just heard nothing but rave reviews about. The community loves it. I think that they would really, I've heard nothing but requests about, we should do this every year, and
do more. I've heard more.
Yeah, I know more.
Longer.
I know. And unfortunately, there was a lot of other concepts around this to make Madison a true destination that just because of the pandemic restrictions, they ended up not being able to roll out. There's a lot of creative ideas around this, partnering with the hotel and the chamber. So, hopefully if we were to continue to do this next year, there would be all these other things that would come along with it to attract people to come and shop and go to the restaurants here, other activities. So,
I will just say, sorry, Craig, they are going to leave them up longer this year. I don't know when they were planning to come down, but they are going to leave them up longer just because the reception has been so positive. And that's, there's no additional cost for that, just leaving them in place.
Yeah.
I don't know till when, maybe the end of February or something.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an investment too. And so, we're using this as a placeholder. I think over time, right now it's being outsourced to a company. So we were thinking about, okay, does it make sense at one point? Do we buy the lights ourselves? Do we, we'll look at different options going forward, but because it is kind of a significant cost every year. But we think it's something we should continue to support.
Very nice.
So that's the only other item on this on the selectmen budget. Okay, any more questions? All right, I guess moving on to human resources.
Nope, we have to go over the risk budget. That's part of
yes.
my line item there.
Forgot, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So
What page is that, Lauren? Sorry.
258.
Thank you.
258. Wow.
So it's part of the general government department. And so you'll see the self-insurance is staying the same, and then you'll see some increases for the line items for the general insurance. Jackson, shh. Sorry, my husband is doing dance pickup right now, so I've got Jack.
That's okay.
So,
Budget at life. It's all good.
So we have increases in the insurance line items that are standard for every year. We do not have the final numbers from the insurance company yet, so we always budget kind of worst case scenario. On the LAP, we assume a 3% increase, but in the last 2 years, that has not been the case. We've had a 0% or an actual savings. So although I anticipate that we will not see a 3% increase on LAP, we always budget for that amount. And then we also budget an increase on workers' comp for the same reason and with the same rationale. And again, once we get those final numbers in February, that's subject to change. And then there is a 10% increase as part of that LAP for the Rockland Preserve accounts. The Rockland Preserve policies have gone up about 10% every year. So we need to continue budgeting that. Unfortunately, Kerma still will not cover Rockland Preserve, so we have to have a standalone policy for that location.
And they're going up 10% each year?
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's been a roughly 10% increase on that individual policy. The total for that policy is around $40,000.
Why won't Kerma?
It's basically it's the bike trails.
Yes,
That's the problem.
yeah,
Because of the risk exposure? Is that why?
correct. Yep.
And Kerma won't do it because of the risk? Is that what they're telling us?
Kerma feels that that location is given the precedent set by a couple of lawsuits that that's not a location that they feel comfortable keeping on the LAP policy.
We don't charge people to go ride their bikes up on those bike trails, do we?
No.
No.
Isn't
Just you, Fillmore. You didn't have to pay?
I paid somebody, gosh, I don't know. But I thought they were, I'm pretty sure that that we're included in the state law that says we're not liable for if we don't charge for admission to these woodland areas, that we're not liable for accidents. I know that that was the land trust, and I'm pretty sure that a few years ago, the state included municipalities in that ruling.
So this has been a running battle with Kerma, going back to maybe 2016.
Yeah.
Kerma is hinging their argument on the fact that the trails have been physically altered. And because they've been physically altered, that puts the town, in their opinion, at a greater risk.
From their natural state, Bruce? Is that why?
Yeah.
So it's altered.
Yeah.
Like adding a jump?
They are groomed, right? I mean, they do go out and
wouldn't that to some extent make them safer?
Yeah.
Well, I think the point would be because we've gone in and altered them, if there's any kind of an accident because of the alteration, then you should have made a safer alteration or you shouldn't have touched it.
Right.
It's when you go in, it's kind of like a helpful Samaritan type rule. It's sometimes if you do something, then you're exposing yourself to liability. Whereas if you don't do anything, you're not going to have liability.
Right. However, I would caution everybody to try not to make too much sense out of this because Kerma is absolutely wrong in their position. And we've been unable to sway them on it. They're conveniently ignoring other towns that they insure that have these trails that have not pointed them out to them. They're conveniently ignoring the laws that Fillmore is quoting. And at some point, it was just decided better to just go out and get a different policy on it. Than I think we fought with them for close to 24 months doing nothing, and then finally said, let's just get a policy.
That's unbelievable.
Well, and it's not something I've given up on. We talk about it every year at renewal.
Yeah.
So it's something that we bring up to Kerma, our broker brings to them every year to see if there is a change of their opinion on the governmental immunity clause. And as of right now, there isn't, and they are requiring this standalone policy.
Wow.
Has Floyd weighed in on this? Have you gotten an opinion from Floyd?
Well, I mean, I'm not aware of any formal opinion. I mean, this was kind of the setup that, last year when I came into office, that we agreed to have this other policy. I know that our insurance broker has been putting a lot of pressure on them because it is costly to us. It's all about the total pie, right, that we're spending on risk. So we are trying to leverage the fact that they're doing this to us and putting pressure on some of the rates that we're, getting.
Well, and the initial policy year, Kerma gave us a credit for the amount of the total policy. So the initial policy year, it was about $38,000, and Kerma credited us $38,000 to remove that location from the schedule.
Well, and then I think that,
It's awful kind of them, so we don't have to double count. I'm not sure I should give them much credit for that, though.
Yeah. Well, I think that to be honest, from what Lauren had said to me, part of the problem is that, we've become a destination for this. It's all over social media. We're listed as great biking trails or whatever in the state. So we're a victim of our own success in that sense. But we'll continue to try to put some pressure on there, but it's just a reality. We've got to have a policy that covers that.
Does the playground did the playground have any impact on it?
No.
What kind of has our experience been,
Can I
Lauren?
just ask one question? I just had one other question, Jude.
Sure.
Who is our broker? Just out of curiosity.
HD Seeger, we're out of Cheshire, now they're out of Wallingford.
Okay, thank you.
I was just wondering, Lauren, what kind of claims experience we've had out of Rockland?
None, but don't
None?
jinx it.
Yeah, okay.
No.
Yeah, now we're gonna have one tomorrow.
Yeah.
I had a tree jump out and hit me in the knee this week.
You gonna file a claim?
You might.
Tree's fault.
Yep.
The way things work with municipal lawsuits, I'm sure to get money.
Well,
So just out of curiosity, though, have we ever, I mean, this is more of a policy thing down the road, but have we ever considered doing passes for Rockland, given that it's a lot of out-of-towners now exploring our community?
You'd have to set up,
yeah.
there's 3 parking lots and you'd have to set up attendance at all 3 lots.
Well, I just put Fillmore in them all.
Well, we
Yeah,
talked
but
about.
if you let me jump in on this,
Yeah.
that if you issue passes, presumably because you're charging for them, then that whole immunity thing goes out the window. We're immune because we don't charge.
Right. I think for the purposes of the budget conversation, it's either close Rockland Park and save the 40 grand or choke
Roll
up
with
the
it.
40 grand and
Sounds like we don't really have a choice unless we go shop around for different rates.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what our broker is basically, supposed to be doing every year. So, but, I will say Kerma overall last year served us very well. So we're hopeful, that we're going to have, something below what we're budgeting for right now. And we'll know that it's February, right? That they come out the numbers?
Yeah, it's the end of February.
Yeah. So it'll be the final budget would reflect whatever their final proposed, their final, funding requirements are going to be. So, so it is insurance. It's a good business to be in.
10%, baby, 10%.
So is that good on that then? Any more questions? All right, so we could probably move on to, now we can go to human resources, right? Is Deb available? I know we're a little ahead of schedule now.
She's on.
Okay, great.
What page are we going to? Does it say 65?
66.
If you go to the very front tab, Scott, of your binder, that's a table of contents. Go under
Yeah, but
budget by departments, the first page, budget by
it's just easier to ask Stacy.
Yeah, I'll say the page number from now on. I have them written down. Sorry, Scott.
No, I'm teasing.
Thank you, Stacy. That will help me.
All right.
She knows I like my paper.
Yeah.
Too.
Okay, Deb, do you want to just kind of give a brief, you on?
Sure. Yep, I'm
Okay,
here.
great.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Kudos. First meeting I've ever been on, you guys have been early. Nice job.
Rocking it.
This shouldn't take much time. So if you go to page 67, that really shows the detail of the expenditures in the HR budget. The only question that I would expect you to raise would be on the salary account, particularly on my salary. Last year, when we put the budget together, I had all good intentions of bringing my hours down to 37.5 hours, and COVID hit. And that increased my hours above and beyond however many hours there are possibly in 7 days. So yeah, speaking with Stacy and with and every director is really in the same boat. We've just been working nonstop. But we've brought my hours back up to 40. There is no raise. There is no increase. The current amount that I'm making right now is exactly what I should be making had I not dropped the hours down. And the funding for that is going to be coming out of the line item transfer, which I'm hoping I will have to both boards in next month. The other increase is in the salary office staff. The job evaluation committee continues with looking at succession planning, not just in my department, but in all departments. This year, it happened to be HR as well as the health department. There were 2 jobs that went for increases based upon additional certifications and qualifications. In my office, Paula obtained her master's degree as well as her certified professional HR certification through IPMA. That was approved by the JEC and approved by the Board of Selectmen, and that's reflected in this year's budget. And to answer Fillmore's question, I'm on the 5-year program. So you've got me for 5 years.
Super.
Well, and I will just vouch for the hours that Deb works. It was kind of funny because when I started, she wouldn't be in on Fridays. She was taking, I don't work, this number of hours. And then all of a sudden I'm like on the phone with her 7 days a week, basically. So it just was a common sense thing to do, to recognize that she's working more than a 40-hour week. So
Fair is fair.
yep.
As is everybody right now.
As is everybody. Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's really the entire meat of the HR budget. Any questions?
Yeah, let me, does this would not be in this department's budget, but at somewhere in the budget, are you building in an overall salary increase for people?
Yes. As usual, that's found in the 8150 account.
Okay.
Stacy, you may have to help me on pages.
257, Deb, I pulled it up, sorry.
So we are down from last year. Last year's budget included the increases for police, which is the largest bargaining unit. This year, we do not have that sort of volume in terms of anticipated salary increases for union personnel. So this is the unaffiliated group and any step increases that may be applicable, not just for the unaffiliated group, but also for any unions, union members.
So the contractual increases are in the individual departments this
Correct.
year rather than lumping them into this line item.
Okay.
Correct.
Just cleaner that way, right?
Well, we do, when we have negotiations with any union, we don't highlight what our target number is. We place it in the salary adjustment line item through the negotiations. And again, this year, we're not in negotiations. And compared to last year where we had police, and again, police is the largest union group that Madison has. So the number was quite high that we had to anticipate. So it now, as Stacy said, all of the unions have their wages or their COLAs built into their salary lines.
Just out of curiosity, when is the next union contract coming up?
We have dispatchers coming up the following January.
Okay, so we might see an increase in dispatch in the following year's budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I've tried to stagger, which was again, one of the goals when I was hired, is to stagger all of the contracts so that we're not negotiating multiple contracts all at the same time. And we're still on cycle with that. Every contract so far has been negotiated for a 5-year duration.
Okay.
Go Deb.
I think it's better for planning purposes in the
Yeah.
long run.
Okay, any more questions for Deb?
No.
No.
Carry on.
All
Okay,
right. It was great seeing you guys. Have a good meeting.
okay, thank you,
Bye.
Deb.
Thanks, Deb.
Okay, is Dave available? I know we're ahead of schedule. Is-
190, Scott.
Nice.
I just texted him a few minutes ago and asked him to jump on early, but I didn't hear back.
Is Nancy around? Maybe we can go to
Yeah.
Nancy.
She just emailed me.
If not, I can go.
Anybody, does anybody have Dave Anderson's cell phone? We could text him.
I did text him. I didn't hear
you did?
back.
All right, why don't we, Stacy, if you want to jump in, because that
Sure.
will work out good.
Sure. I don't know if Orietta's on yet, Lauren, but we could start with my office.
Yeah, she is not on yet.
Can you text her?
Will do.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the structure of my office. It has not significantly changed from last year. Hang on a second. Let me put on my camera. Other than the comptroller position, we had a retirement in the spring when COVID broke out and Don Oslander actually retired. He was with the town for about 30 years. He would come in every Thursday, look at our checks, and it was kind of like a quadruple check for us. What we did is we transitioned that within the staff in the department, so we no longer needed that position. Everybody else is pretty much the same as like Art's office. My whole office is split 50-50 with the Board of Education. So the way you see it in the general
We're your
fund.
favorite, right?
I'm sorry?
We're your favorite, right?
Yes, of course. The way that it's structured in the general fund, half of my office is in one line item, which is under professional and technical for 400,000. And then we actually have it structured in a separate fund where you can see 100% of the cost of my office. So that's on this page. So this is a total cost for the finance office. You will see the salary admin has gone down, and that's primarily because of Don retiring. Nothing else really changed. We have a 2% built-in increase for our audit, and you could see the 100,000 for Munis. It will be staying flat from this year to next year. Not sure if anybody has any questions about the finance office.
What needs to be repaired?
That's a maintenance contract with Munis.
Oh, okay. Okay, right.
Just remind people that that maintenance contract is gone from, what was it?
16,000.
Right,
Well,
to 100,000. So we took that hit last year in the budget. So this is
Yep.
the second year where we're reflecting that size.
And that's in perpetuity. We'll have that now.
Yes, this
Every
is
year.
annual. And just so you know, they're not
Oy.
earning every penny.
Did you say they are or are not?
Are not.
Yeah, and this is another thing where I'll just, say that this has been a huge burden for the finance department, the implementation of this. It's just been, every time I turn around, oh, sorry, they're on a Munis call. Oh, sorry, they're on a Munis call. So, and they've been living and breathing this while we've been going through COVID, while we've had disruptions to the department. And it's just been, a bear. Not to mention issues transferring over to the new year with payroll and everything else. And it's been all hands on deck. And this is another department, not just at the director level, but also, further down the chain, people have been working weekends a lot in this department. So.
I have an amazing staff. They have just really been working nonstop. I can't say enough good things about them. I am so very lucky. And especially you all know that I'm home for 2 weeks now, and they've really been holding down the fort. So I'm very, very fortunate.
you and your team do a very good job. And the conversion to Munis is not easy. And I'm glad you're on the phone a lot, because a lot of times they won't return the phone call for a while. So that part's good.
Yeah, we're still in the implementation stage. So I have a feeling, John, that's in our future. But it is what it is, and we'll just have to figure it out. As long as it's not a payroll week and things freeze up. That's all I really care about. And the lights stay on in the schools.
Maybe a conversation for another day, maybe at a Board of Selectmen meeting, but I'd love to hear how the Munis implementation is going and just kind of the ups, the good, the bad, and the ugly kind of thing. I think that would be useful conversation.
Sure.
For something that costs so much, I think people are a little disappointed. So
That's
and
but honestly, I hadn't
yeah.
even heard that, so that's helpful just to know that was
Yeah.
mediocre. Did you say, Stacy, too, the 100 grand? We're not getting the kind of the value from the 100 grand.
I was being a little facetious, Scott. I mean, the
I'm digging into it.
The implementation, time, that time of in the process just is not easy no matter what.
No.
Hopefully we will eventually get there and things will get to where we need to be. But we're still learning, and it's going to take a little bit of time.
That would be called the
It'll take
valley
time,
of
Scott.
despair
I think
in the
once
change
it's
curve.
implemented fully, and Stacy and her office, they have a good team there. The accountability will be increased and things. It won't be perfect, but I do think it'll be a lot better, but it's not easy.
Well, and I will say COVID has, think about trying to train all these people and
Virtually.
doing it virtually. Yeah. So they can't all sit in a conference room together, and they can't be as much on site. I think sometimes they've been on site, but that's been a real, problem too, trying to do a lot of this remote. So it's just made it worse.
Yeah, that's a good point. We actually, and kudos to all the departments, we actually trained them the week before the budget was actually due into Munis. So, it's been a learning curve for everybody throughout the whole town and the schools. So it's been a little overwhelming.
But all deadlines have been met.
Yes, yes, and we are getting there, and I'm going to stay positive.
Yeah.
We will get every penny of that 100,000 annually, I'm sure.
I thought when I saw the window move over there that there was a palm tree behind it, though. You sure you're actually on 2-week vacation? See you, staff. I'm out.
I hope there is.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
As long as she doesn't have a fuzzy drink
Quarantine.
umbrella in it. Whatever. So, okay,
It's
so
called Quarantini has come back.
yes.
I like quarantinis. Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty funny. Okay, are we good with finance? Do you want me to move? Is Orr here?
No, but Nancy's here if you want to
Okay,
do town clerk, and then we'll go to Dave at 6 when he gets on.
sure.
I'm on now.
So,
Oh.
so who's here? Dave's here?
Yeah.
Okay, 190.
Okay, you ready for me, Stacy?
Yeah, thanks for showing up, Dave.
No problem. I'm early. You already texted me. I jumped right on.
We've been waiting for you.
I've been listening to just hearing about your Maui vacation. So
I thought it was Aruba.
so there's one significant proposed change in my department, and that's a request for a new position, which I'm titling currently as an environmental planner position. I think the budget as it's been shown to you, it represents about a $43,000 increase over this year's budget. Part of that 43,000, part of the savings, so the position is salaried at just under 75,000. It's an increase of 43 over this year's budget. Part of that savings comes from the retirement of the current land use assistant. She's retiring, and Maria Patola, who's replacing her, is sliding in at a lower salary. Part of that reduction is from the current combined zoning enforcement officer and inland wetlands enforcement officer, returning to just being the zoning enforcement officer, getting a salary reduction back to what he was salaried previously when he was just the zoning enforcement officer, and a reduction from 35.5 to 30 hours a week. What that number doesn't show, or I think there's some other funding that I think needs to be considered along this, is about a year ago, I was before both boards with a request to retain a part-time position that was vacated by the retirement of Bob Cookta, who's the former inland wetlands enforcement officer. At the time Bob retired, I decided to give a try of combining the position with the zoning enforcement officer. So we did that. We combined the position, we increased the zoning enforcement officer's salary, and it's worked okay. And when I came to you last year, I said it was a little bit of a trial to see if it worked well. And that, once I had a plan for the funding, that I'd be coming back to you asking to utilize it. And so that position that Bob vacated was about $36,000. So when I did the math, and I'm not Stacy, so she could kind of dig into this a little further. I get, if we went back and basically compared this request over our staffing in fiscal year 18-19, it's about a $17,500 increase. So that's accounting for the fact that, we took a portion of the part-time, gave it to John, and now we're taking it back. And so really, in my mind, the request should be, $17,500. I think Stacy presented it well here, but I just wanted to remind everybody about that part-time position. And so just to go in a little further about why I'm making this request. So my department is currently staffed by 3 people. It's myself, the combined zoning enforcement and wetlands officer, and the land use assistant. So we have about 110 kind of weekly full-time equivalent hours in my department. Back in fiscal year 2009, 2010, so a decade ago, we had 155 full-time equivalent man hours. And our workload has not decreased at all since 2010, it's increased. So in that time, we've taken on 7 additional board and commission responsibilities, which I know some people think, oh, it's just a night meeting, but it's a lot more than that. I mean, it's a workload during the week. It's liaisoning with various committee members. It's managing the workflow and the people. So it's a significant strain on the department to take all that additional workload. And so I find it to be a little bit unsustainable to continue to operate the department with just 3 people. So I'm requesting this environmental planner position. And the way I would utilize this position is to staff be the inland wetlands enforcement officer, the inland wetlands agent. So they work very closely with the inland wetlands agency. They work closely with the Conservation Commission. They work closely with the Coastal Resiliency Commission, and they would probably be the primary town person to help us along with the Sustainable Connecticut program. And so they'd have a lot, they'd immediately have a lot of responsibility. So I would have absolutely no trouble keeping this person very busy and productive. And that would allow me to stay involved with those groups, but focus more heavily on planning and zoning, economic development. I have a historic district commission. We have the bike ped committee. We just started an affordable housing committee. We're getting ready to go into the plan of conservation and development. We also have probably a facilities master plan coming around the corner. And so just, frankly, I'm a bit overloaded, and the position would be extremely helpful for me, and I believe helpful for the town. And so at, even at 43,000, I think it's a deal for the town to get this additional help to focus on these areas. And again, if we just reflect back on, the staffing I used to have, it really represents a $17,500 increase over 18-19, and 140 full-time equivalent hours for the department versus our peak at 155. So I think it's, to me, a reasonable request. And if, I'd be happy to provide any more detail. I don't have the job description written up to date. Deb and I will work on that if we get some indication that this is considered an acceptable proposal by the board. So, go ahead.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Dave. What type of revenue does your department bring in?
So we don't bring in direct revenue other than
You do it indirectly, but go ahead.
Yeah, other than, our applications to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Wetlands Commission. I mean, there's application revenue that comes in, but it's relatively insignificant, I'd say. It's the generation of projects and, impact on the grand list that is, more impactful. And so that's an indirect revenue generation.
Yeah, but you're at these commissions, you're doing indirect, and I was talking more in terms of helping improving projects and things of that nature, where you get permit fees and things like that. That's what I meant by revenue.
So the projects that we help facilitate through our department generate revenue to the building department.
That's what I meant.
The building department isn't creating projects. We're helping create projects, and they're getting the revenue. And the same thing with the health department. They're not necessarily creating a new construction projects. They're just getting the revenue from those. So
my point to that is, would this person help expedite things like the projects of those nature, things of that nature?
Yes, I think they'd help ensure that we have the staff time to devote to assist people with projects. They'd also help to ensure that the projects are being done in a responsible way. More importantly, they're planning for the future. The Coastal Resiliency Commission, we're looking at making sure we're making the proper investments in our shoreline so that grand list, those homes are protected, and so they continue to contribute to to our tax rolls. And so there's a lot of different ways to look at how the position, I think, can be a positive fiscal impact on the town.
Thank you.
I also would just, highlight that, the impact of environmental planning is plays such a more significant role now in towns in Connecticut, particularly along the shoreline. So this is eating up a tremendous amount of more time in a traditional land use department. So to have somebody who can kind of take over these and own this space within land use, I think is going to be a huge benefit. And then it frees Dave up to do town planner work. And, you know, some of the bigger picture projects that we have going on in town. So, you know, things have just gotten more regulated, more complicated, more public focus. And then with coastal resiliency, to his point, you know, this is really about setting ourselves up for the future, for I think even greater demand for environment, you know, addressing environmental issues as we plan land use going forward. Any other questions for Dave?
No, thanks.
As Mary Haberay's already left the building, right?
She's left the building, but she's staying on at just a few hours a week, 11 hours a week, I think, to help in the transition. So she's got another couple weeks to go, the end of February, and then she'll be going, and Maria will be kind of on her own with the land use department.
Dave, a quick question. I'm pretty good with the numbers, but it just takes me a couple days to get there. But I appreciate what you're saying about maybe more apples to apples. We looking at it compared to 18, 19. So is it possible maybe to take a look at that? Because I think 18, 19, just to isolate in on the jobs that you're actually talking about, because I think 18, 19 would also include two admin assistants, right? Which is now kind of separate from all this. You've now gone to one. So maybe we could just look at that, but isolate on the jobs that you're talking about, like not the excluding the administrative assistant, just kind of on the
it's a little more
department jobs.
I think we could do that. It's a little more complicated. So I only have one admin assistant that's funded and dedicated to my department. Only recently we had a little help from a shared employee with the health department, and that was kind of just in the past year or so, as we were just John DeLore and myself were the staff people doing all the work. And so we got a little administrative help to help us, temporarily. But we've, back in 2010, we had 2 admins, and then that got cut back. So we've been operating primarily with 1 admin. So if you look at the budget for 18-19,
okay.
it reflects 1 admin, part-time inland wetlands officer, and then full-time zoning enforcement officer in my. I think it's a good comparison. I don't even think you need to ignore the administrative.
Okay.
And then obviously you got to just adjust for whatever, salary increases and everything, but the budget other than that would be identical.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I thought there was 2, but okay, so that's fine.
We operate, we're lean, Justin. There's lean as we get.
So if I can just speak up a little bit to vouch for Dave, a couple years ago when Bob Cook did retire, he did come to the boards to discuss a position, and everybody agreed to leave the funding in his budget. However, last year he was such a great team player, and because a position was not filled after a year, he agreed to remove that money from his budget. So his budget did go down last year. And Dave, I'm going to take your word for it that it was about 26,000, which would change this number to the 17. But I do remember, last year's discussion, and we did remove that from your budget base. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there.
Thanks, Stacy.
Any more questions for Dave? Nope.
There's no other changes in my department. The only other change with the boards and commissions I work with is the Economic Development Commission has asked to combine their line items. They currently have a tourism and then a professional and technical services line item. They've asked to combine that in one, just to give them a little bit more flexibility about how it's utilized. But other than that, there's no other changes.
And I'm assuming we're all supportive of that. How does that work? Do we just do it?
I think Stacy has it
Yeah.
presented in the budget like that, yeah.
Yep, I'm showing it right now, Scott. All we did was put it all in one account. In total, there was no change.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work. And we will move on to, since Nancy was next.
Nancy's here. Yep.
Good. Okay, great. So Nancy, you're on deck, or you're up. Sorry.
Hi. Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
My budget that you'll see, I did not take last year's numbers because those were inflated because of the presidential election. So I based this on the year prior. I have kept everything flat, exactly the same. So for my office, the only thing that I am asking, which we had just gotten approved through the Board of Selectmen for January of this fiscal year through the end of June, is to bump up my part-time assistant town clerk to full-time. And I encumbered that money and am finding it in funds that I currently have through the town clerk's operating expenses. So what I'm asking for next year, keeping my budget exactly the same, flat, but I will find the additional monies for my part-time to be full-time, if you're willing to approve that. And the increase is sort of offset a little bit. Normally, I would ask for 200 hours to cover, overtime, any sick time, anything like that for my staff. So instead of asking for that, I'm asking for this other balance that I will take and find out of my budget. So I would not be increasing anything, but I'm asking for the support to have her continue full-time. And I'm asking this not just because of what has increased because of COVID, but because of just, I've been asking for years, knowing that the numbers have been going up. I think the same numbers that I've given you in the past, 2017-18, we were $85,000 over what we anticipated for revenue. 2019 to 2020, we were $47,000 over. Right now, just to let you know where we're at, we anticipated a revenue, and we don't really consider ourselves a revenue office, but we had set it at 558.5. At the end of December, we were at 98.5% already. So I am currently 600, trying to find my notes here, 650 documents over what we would normally record from last year. And at that rate, I anticipate we're going to be, 13 to 1,500 documents over what we did last year, and last year was up. So I'm really looking for this position to cover what we needed before COVID. I'm not asking for this for what has increased during COVID, because at some point this will level off. But I still think we're going to be at the situation where we were in the past, 3 years, where the office needs the additional time and help here. We only would have myself and one other full-time person, and we can't juggle that because we always need 2 people in the office. So that's where I'm at with the only thing that I'm really asking in my budget, which I'm keeping the same. I would just be funding it from my accounts.
I have a question more for Stacy. Stacy, since the hours are going from 25 to 35, they're already eligible for benefits at 25 or help any type of benefit. So that does not change, correct?
No, John, actually, you're not eligible for benefits until you're at 30 hours. So this would also add a benefit package.
Thank you. I know sometimes we're 19 hours and at 20 or
Yeah.
20, then they're eligible, but we're 30. Thank you.
We're 30, yes.
So Stacey, do you have a number on what that is? What that?
We estimate for about 28,000 for a value of a full, for a family.
So it's the 10,600 plus another 28.
Well, it's not really going to impact this upcoming budget because we're self-insured and that's based on historical claims and our projected claims. So it won't really come into play until, a year or two from now when the claims are actually part of our budget process. When there's one or two bodies, we do not adjust the health insurance projections.
Right, but it will increase it, and that's just for the health benefits. The 401k benefits, she's eligible for, he's eligible for already.
For the match, correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, over 1,000 hours or 20 hours a week. Less
Well,
and less.
you have to be here 5 years to even get anything.
To
To
get
be
fully,
vested. Yeah.
fully vested.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this has been something that Nancy has been requesting for quite some time. And then, COVID just put kind of supercharger on it in terms of the need. And, once again, if you're just adding one or two people, there's no like budgetary cost. It's just if you get more claims resulting from more people on the plan, then that's obviously going to impact our future healthcare budgets. But that also ebbs and flows, right? So depending on, it's all based on claims history.
Yeah, I understand. I just think it would have been an easier presentation without if they were already receiving or eligible for benefits. But
yeah, right. And so, she's offsetting this with other things in her budget. So it really is. It's just the commitment to having this person as a 30-hour-a-week employee.
Okay, help me understand the offset a little bit. It's because it sounded like the offsets were due to increased revenues, which is great, but that doesn't show up in this expense document that we're looking at.
So if I can, Nancy, if you don't mind, if I can just clarify a little bit and then you can take over. But Nancy, for I think it's the conveyance fees or some kind of town clerk revenue, there's a portion of that revenue that the state allows us to set aside $2, $1 or $2 and put that in a different fund for various town clerk purposes. So that's where Nancy is planning to take the money out of that fund. It's not a reallocation like our other departments within the general fund operating budget. She plans to use those other funds that are set aside in a different fund to pay for this position. I'm not sure if there would be other projects that would be slowed down a little bit, Nance, if you did use these funds for that. But I just wanted to clarify, it's not a reallocation within the general fund. It's actually coming out of a different fund.
Right. So there's actually two funds that the money goes into. One's called a dollar fund, and the other is a $2 fund. We have been accumulating it so that we can keep up with different projects in the office, restoration projects that have really fallen behind and not been addressed. So we really need to get up to code on certain things and compliance. So, it will take a bit of a hit, but I'm willing to do that and need to do that for the benefit of the office.
Listen, I'm missing something here, and so I'm sorry, but to me, if you have the revenue coming in, that's a separate issue. If you believe in this, we should put it in the budget with the benefits and approve it, right, period. To me, the revenue should be a different, you don't want the departments to say, I'm going to offset my expenses with revenue. I don't think how the budget process works. I'd much rather just see, here's what we're going to do. I'm putting it in the budget and then revenue goes in the general fund. So I must be missing something, Nancy, with this.
Okay. Because this is like the fourth time that we've come to you and asked. You're going to have to excuse me because we've taken such a hit in my office, and for 4 years, we've asked, and we just can't continue to go on under the employment situation that we have now. Morale is terrible right now, and we're physically and mentally exhausted. So in a way around trying to get the board to agree to this, I have planned to, in whatever way, sacrifice my budget to make up to pay for the additional hours. Because the office can't afford to have it turned down again. So this was the only way that we could come up with that seemed the most logical way to get this to pass, was for the budget and these various, even if it comes out of separated from different line items, that we have to take a hit in this area to get this to pass.
Let me see if I can, say what I think I'm hearing here, and Stacy, you and Nancy can correct me if I end up being wrong. That unlike the building permit fees or something of that sort that goes into the general fund and shows up as revenue, that there are some of these document registration fees that go into a separate fund. I'm tempted to use the term slush fund, but that would give the wrong impression. But a separate lockbox, let's say, that is available for, and it doesn't show up as revenue, but it's available to the town clerk to do these some of these documentation, microwaves, microchips, and all these kind of things to pay some of these document expenses. And that what Nancy is saying is that she will use part of this lockbox to pay for the employee rather than document copying and some of these restoration. Is that roughly what I'm hearing?
Yeah,
Pretty
I would
much.
agree.
Go ahead.
That's a good way to explain it. It can also be used for staff and operating expenses for projects and things like that. So this would seem appropriate that if I can certainly take it from there. There is a lot that we have earmarked already for online recordings to be viewed, and we're working on maps to go online. So I have a lot of different projects in the works right now to make it easier for the public to obtain everything without coming into the office. But I can juggle it a bit and sort of just spread it out a little bit longer by incurring these fees to cover the additional amount of what it would be to make the part-time person full-time.
So we've had many discussions about this. And I think Nancy and I have, and I'm very much supportive of her getting this position made full-time. I think that the information's there. I think it's really just going to have to be now the boards have to, come together and deliberate at our workshops about moving forward. So, so if there's any other information that people need here, just in terms of questions, weigh in, but otherwise, I think it's good to move on because this has been discussed at length at different meetings. So.
Well, I was going to ask Nancy, is that something maybe it would help if you could provide, whatever, the last 5 years, I'll say, but just not revenue, but in terms of actual transactions, you mentioned like licenses, deeds, whatever you guys transact, is that something that we could see? A timeline of the number of transactions?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I put together, just to let you know, if we're looking at marriage licenses, for instance, a 5-year average would normally be 118 a year. In 5 months, we've already done 70. The births, and deaths, really there's no control over any of these, but they're all up. A 5-year average on births is about 100 a year. I averaged out 1, 2, 3, 4. We've had 5 months of documents in for that. We're already at 64. Deaths, I only have 4 months. We're at 39. So a 5-year average is about 186. if we're looking at the total of documents that come in, last fiscal year, we were at 3449. And right now we're at 2,493.
Yeah, Nancy, let me jump in for 1 second.
Yep.
I want to be clear. I think the position is needed. I just wanted to go on. I didn't want to get into the revenue side. That's all I was trying to say. So if Justin needs that, I think, first of all, this should be a Board of Selectmen's decision if the position is needed, right? And then the Board of Finance should come back and say, okay, we have the money. Here's where we're going to get the money. I know you're passionate about this, and I understand your frustrations. But my only point to all of this is you made the case that the position's needed, standing on its merit. So why don't we? My suggestion, Madam First Selectman, would be to let the Board of Selectmen decide if this position is needed, and then the Board of Finance will figure out if it should be funded.
Yeah, and John, just to be clear, I agree with you. It's not a revenue's not the issue. That's why I was asking, just number of transactions. That's the real burden for the department, is how many documents they need to process. So that's all I was thinking that would help. If we saw that trend line for the last 5 years, I think that would be a great visual that would help us.
Yeah.
And
I can give you that.
Completely. I just think it's something to move to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think right. I think, this is, I'm comfortable that this is needed. And, I think the Board of Selectmen will then just have to decide in terms of moving the budget forward, if it's going to be included in another meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Justin can get his information to justify the financial side.
Yep. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
you can email Nancy if there's specific things that would help you, to dig into this a little bit more. But I do feel that, this has been, for 4 years now, she's requested this. The office is busy. It's not like people aren't being utilized. The work is there. It's just the question is, do we bring in people part-time, or through overtime versus having just somebody that she trusts that can stay in the department and do the work. So.
Well, the other thing is, if I can add, Catherine is the part-time person. She's already certified. She can, notarize and give oaths and do all the things that are needed and sign off on the birth certificates and all the vitals. So
There's my point right there. So I
Right.
think we just,
Right.
no
No,
offense,
that's
Nancy, I think we let the Board of Selectmen make their decision.
Yeah.
And then we go from there. But I do appreciate, I remember last year, I can't go back 4 years,
Thank
but I
you.
remember last year.
Yeah.
I know.
I was gonna say, obviously it's not COVID related. I think we all
Yeah.
remember last year,
Yeah.
and, you're making the point.
And I will say,
Meet
you have
last
less people in your office than a lot of towns. I can say that much.
Yeah.
I think can I just make one quick comment? I think, just listening to Nancy's appeal and recognizing the fact that she's made this appeal multiple times over the last couple of years. I guess I'm mildly concerned, and this is something we can talk about in our budget workshop on the Board of Selectmen side, but I'm mildly concerned that she's having to sacrifice her budget to pay for personnel. I'm not entirely
that was
sure
my
that's
point.
fair.
Yes,
I think that's something that we should be talking about and really looking at to help her.
I think that's exactly what John's point was as well.
Thank you.
No department should have to do that. If they've got a need, they've got a need, and it goes into the budget, and we take care of that.
Well, and I think that was
Thank
kind
you,
of the
Judy.
approach that was used for this year in order for her to just get her in
Right.
and get the hours in. But obviously sustaining that is, you're right. It's another discussion that we should have as part of the next year's budget process. So, all right. So
Thank you.
I think that we're good to move on, folks, and you'll each have the opportunity
Yes.
to talk about this more again. So.
Yeah, if anybody has a question, I'm available. I can answer any questions. Yeah, so now we move on to the registrars. And again, with the registrars, we did not use last year's numbers because of the presidential. We went the prior year. There's just a few things that we're doing here. Number one, just to make a comment that the minimum wage is going up to $13 an hour on August 1st. So we've incorporated the poll workers at $13. So really, if anything, it's just a month. They're at $12 an hour now. So that would be at 13. The one thing that we were asking is that the two deputies would go from the $13 to $15 an hour with this budget. That's an hour, they average out about 5.5 hours a week. So about 300 hours a year. This year, we do have 2 new registrars and 1 new deputy. So there's an increase in their, I think, and I just want to mention there was a couple line items that may have had kind of an odd name on it, but for classes and courses and travel, I think it's technically under supplies, but that's been increased to account for the classes that they have to take. And that's it. Otherwise, they've been kept the same. We anticipated the municipal election in November and 2 referenda.
And I think that, we've all recognized that people in this position, are hugely dedicated, and if anything, probably significantly underpaid, given the importance they provide to the community. And just trying to at least keep track with and slightly above minimum wage, I think is a reasonable thing to do. I think that if anything, we talked about, the registrars at one point, thinking through that budget, right? And is that adequate for what really the responsibilities that that position holds in terms of our successful election? So.
Yeah, and the deputies, just on a regular weekly basis, they really put in a lot. I would hope that putting them up to the $15 an hour is approved.
Excuse me, I'm looking at the page here and I see a line that says salary for the deputies. I don't see a line for the registrars themselves.
So they're actually on a separate line here. Let me see if I
Oh, wait a minute, that's the wage line. Okay. Yeah, sorry, never mind.
I think it's salary department head.
Yeah.
The first one. It's
Right,
not
that's
deputy, it's department head.
Those are the two registrars,
All
right?
Okay.
I
Thank
think election support, if you look at that line, I think that's where the deputies are. Wages, just under wages. I think it's the 3rd one down. That's where the poll workers and the deputies would
Yes,
salaries would
actually.
come out of.
Okay.
And also, Nancy, when we had gone through this budget, this does not reflect possible changes by the Secretary of State of
No.
Moving towards early voting or any kind of
No.
enhanced mail-in voting. We don't know where things are going to fall in terms of the qualifications to do absentee ballots yet, even for the referendum, the budget referendum.
Right.
So I will say, and this I think, we spoke about this a couple of months ago, you can't predict some of this. So I will just flag that we just tried to be like, okay, let's just, take a guess right now, make sure we get good people. And then there's probably going to have to be something, and maybe the state will be providing some sort of resources for that, but there may have to be additional expenses that come through this for elections.
Right.
And it might be more hours, especially if they do come forward with some sort of early voting proposal.
Right, and that, I think that end of it, and it depends. It depends on the how they structure it. This past election, it was the town clerk's office that took the hit, time-wise preparing absentee ballots. But it depends. If they decide that they're going to do something for early voting and use the tabulators, then it's going to be more on the registrar side. Yeah, so we just don't know right now.
Yeah, and I think the other piece is on the voting machines. We're going to have to really think forward about what the town needs to do in this. We just didn't really have the ability to really focus on this because we're trying to actually get the election done, right? When this was budget was put together. But that's another thing that we have very old machines that are outdated, and we're going to have to do something about replacing that and upgrading.
Yeah, because you can't get these any longer. So, and I think this is like what it's like around the state. So I think that the Secretary of State's office has got to come up with a solution as well.
Yeah.
For everyone,
Right.
and what direction we're going to be going in.
Yeah, so that's another kind of wild card out there that will be possibly, I think this budget is going to look probably quite different for the next fiscal year.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, any more questions for Nancy?
Thanks, Nancy.
All right, great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye, Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, great. Next is Colleen.
Tax collector Scott, page 100.
Nice.
All right. If I recall, this was pretty straightforward, right, Colleen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is Colleen on?
I moved her over.
Okay. Here she is. Okay, Colleen, you're up.
Is that better?
Yep.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Colleen.
So this is what I've put together. We don't have, we've got small increases. One of the things that I'm asking for, we did add this year was we added return envelopes in with our tax bills. And that was pretty much because of COVID. We were trying to troubleshoot how we were going to encourage people to make payments, but not come into the town hall. So we added return envelopes in with our mailing. So that was and still is a huge success. And we would like to, do that again for the future. And people they've responded well with it. They've liked the fact that that's in there. One of the other items on here is for the staff development. I do have a little bump up on there. Last year, they have required us to recertify, and that we have to have CE continuing education units. So, and I did realize that the cost of the programs are a little bit more than what I anticipated, so I increased that a little bit this year. And that's pretty much it.
So the one thing I want to highlight, you can see this new overtime line item. That's going to be a common theme in the department's budget with Munis as far as paying overtime. We had to set up a separate line item. So if you look at that last year, you got to combine that 65 and the 5,000 to compare it to last year. So it's not a new line item this year for Colleen.
Thank you, Stacy.
Okay, so thank you, Colleen. Colleen has also been riding the COVID wave with all the changes for when taxes can be paid and everything else, but she's getting it done. So thank you.
Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you.
Yeah, Colleen, good idea with the return envelopes.
Thank
Fillmore,
you.
you get your dinner yet?
Yeah. I got what?
Did you get your dinner yet?
Have a
Okay,
good night.
so we did finance, so youth and family services is
Thank you, Colleen.
We have to do assessor yet, Peggy? The assessors, yeah, I know, it's
That's right.
with my office.
Yep, okay.
I don't know. Is Orietta on?
She's here. I moved her.
Or are you here?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hey, Lorietta.
Video. Sorry about the video.
So Or's office, the assessor's office, I have to say they are they work so hard, you know, they don't, they're kind of the silent office that helps us bring in all this revenue. So I do want to thank her and her team for everything they're doing. I know they're working really hard right now to finalize the grand list, as well as the elderly program is about to kick in as well. And so, Or, thank you for all you do. I'll just walk us through. We have a couple of things that to highlight for this year. In Orietta's budget, you will see that the overtime line item is broken out as well. Like I just talked about in Colleen's budget, we had to do that. It is increased a little bit because the rate in the overtime hours last year was lower than it is in this upcoming year. And that is because we filled a vacancy, and the person who is in that vacancy's hourly rate is higher than what we estimated last year. So we did have to bring up, if she does happen to work the difference between 35.5 hours to 40 hours, she would be the one being paid the overtime. So we just had to increase the hourly rate. We did not increase the hours at all. The other operating line item that I want to highlight is the data processing line item. And this is because of a vision appraisal upgrade that we had to do. We had no choice. This was forced upon us, and now we are storing the information in the cloud. Therefore, our annual maintenance fee has increased quite a bit. So that's the increase in that line item. So that, unless you guys have any questions on that, I just want to talk about the Rebound Reserve for a minute. So currently we fund every year $84,000, and we put that into the Rebound Reserve. So when we have to do a reval every 5 years, we don't have a spike in our budget. So we pretty much save for that reval that happens every 5 years. So we've been putting in 84,000. However, this year you will see we are requesting an increase. So last year, Orr came to us and said, you know what, I think the reserve is running a little low based on all of our cases. Our legal fees were coming out of here, our appraisal fees. And we said at the management level, why don't we wait and see what happens? Well, now we only have 2 more years to save for this reval that's going to happen in 2023. And it looks like we're projecting a deficit of $60,000. So rather than bumping up the reval reserve next year by 60,000, our request is to spread it over 2 years, 30,000 this year and 30,000 next year.
Trying to ease the pain.
Yes, trying to smooth it out a little bit.
Stacy, since
Yes.
this is a kind of a one-off or a two-off pumping up of a reserve account, could we consider a special appropriation of 60 grand into that reserve account to make it whole and not hit the operating budget?
We could, but I do think, Bruce, you know, 5 years from now or 7 years from now, we could be in a similar situation. So I do think that 84,000 should be increased, maybe not by $30,000. So if you did choose to do that, sure. But I do think eventually that 84,000 will need to increase.
So I completely agree. And I wasn't trying to say we keep it 84 forever. I think we need to do a recalculation on what the correct amortization is of that expense. You know, rather than create the operating line of 114, we, you know, maybe it needs to be 90 or 95 or something like that. But we take care of this 60,000 miss just with a excess fund balance money.
That's certainly a recommendation that you can make to the Board of Finance, you know, start with the Board of Selectmen, sure.
We could also just increase it some number this year. And whatever the shortfall is, we can take it out of the unassigned fund balance to make up that difference. But we can at least start increasing the reserve this year, not by 30, but maybe by some lesser number.
Yeah, and
Stacy, do you have a sense of what that right reserve number is moving forward?
No, I don't. We can certainly project it out. You know, we were focusing on getting us to the next, you know, to fiscal year 23, and then, you know, moving forward and smoothing it out over the following 5 years in order to pay for, you know, 7 years from now. So we can certainly do some analysis on that. I know Aura spent a lot of time looking at this, and she may already have it, but we can get that to you for your workshops, for your discussion, if you'd like.
Right, but to Jude's point, we could maybe take the next 2 years and step that number up to the right amount so that, you know, we're moving into the next cycle with the proper funding.
Right.
Yeah, Bruce, I think your idea and Jude's idea are very good ones to move forward with. But I'm getting from this that the reserve that we set aside for is not just to pay company X to do the revaluation every 5 years, but it also covers the complaints that come in after that for a couple of years and all the extra costs that can, and so that's a little bit of an unknown. So maybe that's why we've got a problem.
You're absolutely right, Fillmore, and Orietta just asked me before the meeting why we didn't include that. So there are legal fees for all of the appeals that come in. There's also appraisal fees. What we did when we developed our legal budget for next year, there was a little wiggle room. So we kept that flat, and we decided that the legal fees for any of these Board of Assessment, you know, the appeals that come through there would come out of that line item. But absolutely, Fillmore, those are other unknowns in future years that we may want to cover within this reserve fund.
Yeah, and Fillmore, you're right. It's a bit of a guess. But, you know, we've been
well,
doing.
it's taking one. I think that, Bruce, to your point, you're kind of taking these one-off adjustments to right-size the account, and you're building that into the operating budget, right?
Correct.
It's shown, right?
Yeah, there is a number that needs to be adjusted up from the 84, but it's not 84 plus 30.
Right. Yeah. No, I think if you can get what you think the right number is, and then we can focus on that in the workshop and come up with a recommendation. I think that absolutely certainly helps. And then we'd have to obviously talk to the Board of Finance about their willingness to make that adjustment next year, so that we are adequately funded when we actually have to start paying for this stuff. So.
Yep, and knowing Or, she probably already has her arms wrapped around it, so we will definitely get that to you for February workshop.
Okay, great. Is that it on this? Okay, great.
Thank you, Or.
Thank you.
All right. So now bouncing back, Youth and Family Services, right? Is Scott available?
Yes, page 218.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Scott.
How's everyone doing?
Great.
Well,
yours is pretty easy, Scott, this year, isn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, this might be, I might be the easiest department for you guys to get through this year, so you're welcome. Look, you know, we
Okay, you're all
recognize-
set, Scott, thanks.
You don't get off that easy, Scott. So look, I mean, we recognize we're in a pandemic. Certainly our department is pretty stressed with trying to meet the needs, the mental health needs primarily of our youth and families during this time. You know, we're making do with the resources we have. The interesting thing looking at next year is that we really needed to consider what might be more of a normal quote unquote year. So estimating what we might have expected to do for things like mileage and program expenses. You know, it's so challenging because we just had to change everything last year. So we had money set aside in this year's budget for a retreat that we do with our helpers. We didn't do a retreat this year. So those are savings that obviously we will, you know, pass on back to the town. But we do want to resume that when we, again, go back to normal. So we really used 2 years ago as more of a marker for where we would expect expenses. So really the short of it, we kept a level budget. In terms of our program budget, it's really just moving some money around where we felt we could make better use of it. The big move was $2,000 from our local relief line. So that's a social services line that we use mostly for emergencies for social service clients. The reason we felt like that was flexible was that we've had so much great assistance from like neighbor to neighbor. So we've got funding to help with some of the social service emergencies that come up. And we typically spend about half of that budget. We usually keep it at about 20 grand a year. We year to year have been spending about half of it and then giving back the other half. We've always felt like we want to keep that fund pretty well flush, at least to that level, because we want to be prepared if there was a major emergency, like if we had to do, some major arrange for major housing, or like there was a larger natural disaster of some kind. We felt like we would need that money there and have it. And if something ever happened where we didn't have the privilege of neighbor to neighbor, we would also have some funding there to support our community members when they're financially and undergoing hard times. So we did move a little bit of money out of there, move that towards our professional technical line. That is the line in which we use to reimburse our contractual therapists. We want to make sure that that line is pretty well stocked. Our mental health services are probably the thing that are most in need right now. So making sure that we have at least the amount of contractual people that we can keep to provide therapy to youth and families this year and obviously going into next year. We do use an enhancement grant also to reimburse some of the contractual work we do. That's a state grant that comes to us facilitated through DCF. That's usually around 10 grand a year. We expect that we're going to have that money this year, but as I'm sure you all know, things at the Capitol and budgeting are certainly up to a lot of debate this year. So again, want to just make sure that we have enough on that line that we can keep the number of contractual therapists that we have on board. So other than that, minor tweaks to postage and mileage. There's not much else that really stands out, at least to me. On our program side, I think there was some small increases on our staffing budget, smaller than in recent years. And I think those are due to step increases that were due. I do have one other comment, but I'll stop there. Just make sure that you all can have a chance to ask me if you have any questions about the budget numbers.
Scott, can you just explain a little bit more of what a contractual therapist is? Is this an employee of the town?
No. So that we have employees, town employees that do serve as licensed mental health therapist clinicians. To offset some of the need, we also contract. We have separate contracts with people so that it's for an hourly rate. And they either come to our office, and all of this is being done virtually right now, and they act as a therapist. They follow, they basically fall within our structure of clinical services, and they become the therapist, and they become a part of our team. So they attend our clinical meetings and provide support to one another and help guide and support treatment. These tend to be younger clinicians, so people who come out of, and they tend to be ex-interns of ours. So it is a way to kind of keep people connected here that are working towards licensure. So they've graduated, they have their masters and working on ours. So they, they've already know our system, they know our clientele, and we know them. So it's a good fit.
So they're paid an hourly wage and not a fee for service type of thing?
Correct. Yeah, that's how we have it set up. Yes.
Scott, I do notice that I looked over at the revenue page and you're projecting a revenue increase of 14 or 15 grand. which would offset some of these increases. Am I reading that correctly?
So I'd have to look at so I think we kept our clinic revenue projection pretty level. Where we're,
Your
That's
council,
me. You know what, Fillmore, it's actually for the revenue, the way Munis recorded the original budget, it said 60,000, but for revenue, you need to look in the revised budget. So the 75 is flat.
oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry, that was a
That's okay.
Munis hiccup.
Okay.
But just a quick follow-up, Scott. So these are 1099 people. They're not town employees.
yeah, they're not town employees. Yep. Yep. And we have a paper contract that's been vetted through the town attorney. So, and we use that boilerplate each year when we bring these people on, and they're on for a year. It gives us a chance to review it and renew it if they stay on for the next budget year.
And then does the town seek reimbursement from the insurance carrier?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yep. So, and this, we typically reimburse contractual therapists anywhere between $25 an hour up to like $35, $36 an hour. And, if they're seeing a client, the reimbursement rate is usually anywhere from like $65 to $75 in reimbursement from an insurance. So it's for the most part, it more than pays for itself, and gives us a staff. It's our way of having more options for people for clinical services.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Scott, for everything. And, especially during this year, it's been incredibly challenging, and your department has been a huge resource for people in the community. We've all seen the donations flow through as we approve them. So it's been incredible.
Yeah, that's been a great program. And if I could just mention really quickly, so where I left off at last year's budget discussions, at that point, we had started a work study primarily focused on our clinical services. So we at least know that we follow through on that, thanks to Peggy. And, we've been working with that consultant. We have at least a draft report of that study. And I just want to mention, I'm looking forward to having a chance to review that with everybody, because I think that report's pretty comprehensive, and I think it'll help reinforce some of the things that we've been saying, and help, I think, in terms of the guidance of my department, of our Youth and Family Services Department.
Yeah, and I think the hope is to get that to the board. We were going to schedule a meeting to talk about a couple of these studies. So I haven't circled back with them, but it does highlight the incredible resource that this department is to the town, and the value that we get from it. With the staffing that he has and the model that he has. So, but that'll, and maybe what I'll do is try to get that out to everybody prior to the workshop as we go through budget. So, okay.
Yeah. Nope. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, Scott.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Take care.
Okay,
Have a
good.
night.
All right. Moving on, beach and recreation.
Page 208.
Obviously, we've all had been kind of made aware of the reorganization where this department is going to be combined with senior services. But because of just Munis, time and simplicity, we've had it presented as independent departments going forward next year. You'll see this as a kind of combined department going forward, but for purposes of this budget, we stuck with the independent budgets. And then you'll see adjustments in each one to reflect some of the changes that are going to be in the new structure. Did that kind of explain it right, Stacy?
Yeah.
Okay.
For now, we just kept them separate, but it does represent the changes that we're looking to do.
So, and I think Scott Erskine is coming on board. Is that right? And then I know Austin's here. I'm thinking We should have had these two back to back, so I don't know why they're separate. Was that a scheduling
We
problem?
could,
or-
we could maybe do it now if we're, if Austin is here. If we're
Yep.
running, early, we can just have Austin continue with senior.
Yeah, I think that would be good if you could just try him to kind of be, because it's a good lead in, to his department as well.
Definitely, yeah.
So, Scott, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. All right.
Austin's not here, though.
I'm texting him.
Okay, I think we could start just because one of the big difference here is just beach staffing, right? And we kind of went through this a lot last year. We opted to kind of economize a little bit and not have a full have a kind of truncated staffing model for 5 days a week. I think the experience that we had this spring and through the summer, we realized the community we needed it because of COVID, but I think also the community demanded it 7 days a week. So in this budget, it reflects as an additional budget request, ramping up from that 5 day a week model to 7 days a week. And if I recall, that's probably one of the bigger differences, right, Scott?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of our stuff is, wage related as far as the grounds staff and everything else. So in the additional budget request, you can see that by adding the Saturday, the Monday, Tuesday, it's 27 days and we have 6 guards on a day. It's 7.5 hours. And I average it out at $18 an hour. That is high because not all of the guards make the $18. They may be at 16. So I'm erring on the side of caution in order to make us be able to cover it. So to add those 2 days back on, we'd be adding the 21,870 to the wages for facility supervision line item. And the same goes with the gate guards and facility monitors. That's in there. That's 27 days, 5 gate attendants, 7.5, and that number is accurate unless I don't have returning staff where they would be starting at 1350, not 14.
And I think that last year, one of the big challenges was that, lifeguards got more expensive, right? And we didn't have them the previous 2 years, I think, 2 summers. And so we were kind of ramping up that. I don't think you're increasing the actual wage rate, are you,
No.
for any of the positions? And we adequately were able to recruit easily last year. And you seem confident this year as well, right?
Yep.
At the pricing?
We're getting, David is talking to the guards that were here last year. And I think most of them are going to be coming back, and we have some interest already for new guards to come on. So he's reaching out to them, and I mean I think we're in a good place. Brantford is unable to get lifeguards, so I mean they're in the boat where we were. So I think we pulled us out. So hopefully it can continue.
So I don't know if you want to go back to the budget itself, if there's anything else you want to highlight in there. In this department, we had basically we had one, in addition to Scott retiring. This reflects the organizational changes we talked about, where Scott would actually stay on a part-time basis for an additional year, and that's reflected in this budget. And in addition, Barb Sabiston retired. She had part of her position is funded through before and after school. And then she did have, I forget the amount, where she was administrative for Beach and Rec. And so we're not replacing that position in the department for next year. And then we did take the another individual's position and kind of redeploy that into a supervisory position versus a assistant director position. So there's been some shifts here in staffing, combined, just reflective on the org chart and everything that you saw in the executive sessions. I think that both boards I presented. And so that's all reflected in here. So I think, you know,
One of the big increases, and that is a placeholder, is the disposal, waste disposal.
Yes.
I included the amount total that we're paying for this year. So we do have to go out to bid because that contract ends June 30th. So we have to go out to bid to get hopefully new pool of vendors, and hopefully we can drive the price down.
Yeah, and that's something that we were under budgeted for, because the bids came back, you know, in the spring after the budget had been finalized. And we were kind of stunned at the increase that we saw from our trash vendor. So we're exploring a couple different options, including maybe trying to manage it in-house. But I think we have to, from just a budget standpoint, at least assume that if we don't get any additional bids and we can't do it ourselves effectively, we're gonna have to get the trash picked up. And this relates to downtown. The big increase was doing the Boston Post Road trash pickup downtown. That's really what was driving this.
Yes, during our lovely summer.
With lots of takeout.
Yes.
Getting crammed into the bins. And let's just say maybe, you know, a couple times a week, I get a nice photo of from a resident of an overflowing trash bin sent to me. So, you know, we got to deal with the problem. And that wasn't just the problem, but it's also the mechanics of them. I guess the style of the bins and everything was a lot more labor intensive than they had originally estimated when they bid on the project the previous year. So, so I mean, this is obviously a big department. There's a lot of detail here, but I think really overall, you know, we're looking at kind of, you know, status quo plus 2 more days a week for the lifeguards for the summer, and then the changes that we talked about for the reorganization.
Scott, just a question. I'm looking at the page here. Go back up to the personnel page, if you would. Yeah, this year you've got 4 facility monitors, and next year you've got 12 plus 6 gym staff. That's fine that the gym, I guess we're anticipating that we'll be able to reopen after COVID, but why the increase in facility monitors?
Facility monitors are combined with gate guards. They all kind of do the same thing. And in order to cover the beaches with two at each gate for backup, that's why the number goes up.
So we weren't doing that this past summer.
Yeah, I was able to float people in and out and move people around. So we did have the coverage at East Wharf for 2, and then as well as the surf club.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any more questions? And was Austin able to join?
Yes, I think Austin's here.
Okay, great. Okay, Austin. We just thought we'd move you, you know, after Scott, since I talked about how the 2 budgets are still kind of separate, but obviously they reflect some of the you know, personnel changes that we're making for the department.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and what I will say, just to before Austin, this does not reflect other initiatives that we would be looking to do in terms of efficiencies and stuff with the two departments. This is just reflecting, what they could forecast right now, plus the personnel changes. So this doesn't reflect like combining software booking programs or any of that kind of stuff. Or
I think we just-
226, Scott.
Did we lose Peggy? She's frozen.
so.
We get a frozen picture.
Come on, Austin. What did you do to Peggy, Austin? Come on.
Magic, John.
Magic. Well, I guess
There
everything's
she
all
is.
set.
She's back.
Okay.
Magic of the internet.
Sorry.
hey, if I got off,
just
it'd even
covered
go
it
a
all.
lot faster, wouldn't it? I could
I
just.
just made a motion to approve and let's go.
We just covered it all. We're good.
Fine with me. My dinner's still downstairs. I can smell it. So. All right. So Austin, go ahead.
Okay. So, are you just interested in the additional budget requests? Everything else, on my line items is staying the same. The only thing I increased was, let's see. Where are we here? The cable TV went up a little bit. It's not a huge increase, but so $90 for next year.
Thanks,
for
bud.
now.
We
We didn't
gotta,
have
we gotta
Austin.
remove that, Austin. That's ridiculous.
It's
It's
actually
rough.
flat, Austin.
Yeah, we should be able to cover it. We did some work on that. That'll be fine. So the only additional budget request is the municipal agent for the elderly. So with the reorg and Heather taking over as the assistant director of the combined departments, in order for that to occur, we need to relieve her of some of the municipal agent duties, which entails the social services end of what we do here. So senior tax relief, Medicare, Medicaid applications, rent rebate, SNAP food stamp program, things of that nature. So hiring a part-time 29-hour position as municipal agent for the elderly. We put it in to start in January, so a half a year position to kind of ramp it up for the following year. So it's you're funding half of it this year and then the full thing the following year, or the year we're talking about, and then the year after that will be the full item. And then everything else you see here is reflective of the reorg salaries.
So Stacy,
Yes.
in keeping with my prior theme of one-time expenses, we've got 2 severance payouts this year. This is one of them. Since those are one-time expenses, and if we were to pull that out of the excess fund balance, this wouldn't in fact be an increase, an additional budget request. It would be an overall reduction, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yep.
And I agree, these one-time severance payouts, I mean, that would be my preferred course of action, to do a special appropriation rather than build it into the budget base.
I agree. If it's one time, better way to do it.
The idea of putting it and increasing the base over one-time expense, I don't agree with.
Yep.
We all agree.
Yep, good idea, Bruce.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think in total, there's about $100,000 in severance payments that we could talk about at the workshop to treat
How
differently.
was this done in previous? I thought this was the way it had been done in previous years. So I guess I was just sticking with what the expectation was. Is that not the case?
I think it's a matter of timing. You know, this is a July 1st start, so we didn't want it to get lost. So we did throw it in here, and my plan was for this to be a discussion item of a possible special appropriation versus building it into the base.
And then if I recall correctly, the part of the long-term plan, Peggy, maybe you can speak more directly to this, is to take that 60,000 for the part-time year that we're gonna have Scott. When he sunsets on that, we would transition over into a beach and rec supervisor who would take that salary space.
Yeah, possibly. That's what we're gonna see. That was the intention. That's kind of the phase 2. As we look at what staffing needs. We need to see kind of how this transition goes, and there's some other things being thought about, but yes.
So that means it would still, it should be in the base budget because it might continue, albeit under a slightly different name.
I'm just calling it out, Fillmore, because it looks here as if that's another expense that would sunset, but probably really won't.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And this is pretty much what was shown in the executive session. I mean, these are the exact numbers, I think, when we went through what the net impact was. This probably lays it out a little bit better. But I do agree that the severance, I just thought this was kind of the way that we always did it.
We have to do it that way, right, Peggy?
Right. No, I know. So, that's something we can talk more about in the workshop. Like I said, the other thing is that, trying to look back. So, Austin, just remind me, you didn't make any changes then to like kitchen staff or bus ride. Right now we haven't been able to offer any of those services, but the assumption is that, July 1, the senior center is going to be open and we're going to have our bus drivers back. We're actually looking to bring them back possibly in the next couple of weeks to help with vaccination transportation.
Right. So we kept all the salary line items for the complete kitchen and transportation staff. So yeah, we will be bringing back one bus driver in the next 3 to 4 weeks, and then to provide transportation to like COVID vaccination clinics, and then hoping to restart completely July 1 if all goes well with people getting vaccinated and the numbers stay good.
Okay.
Looks good.
Any more questions?
Can we just take a look at that, Austin? Because it looks like you're down a driver for all of next year, unless I'm reading it wrong. Just on the personnel chart, the people chart at the beginning. Yeah, am I?
Where are you? Oh, I see.
Those two.
I see 2 bus drivers, but then one like Michael Rand.
Yeah. So Justin, Mike Rand passed away last year, and we moved up Bill Lufsey from per diem to fill that spot. So I guess the proposed is off a little bit. So we did just not fill. We don't have like a spare bus driver anymore. We're able to.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
If somebody
I didn't.
If we get a call out or somebody has vacation, we figure it out with the 2 people. We don't need that 4th person.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't see the hours. Those are only 5 hours. So it's total. Now it's the one at 29. Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's good.
Thanks, Austin.
Any other questions or concerns or anything?
Good, Austin. All right, great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Yep.
Hi, Austin.
He's gonna be a very, very busy boy the next month. I have to say, the senior centers are gonna be taking a huge lead now, which is just a surprise that was dropped on us by the state. But to get vaccinations at the local level, senior centers are gonna play a key role going forward, so.
I guess
You're muted, Justin.
sorry, Peggy. I thought I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you were finished. Sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
I just, Austin, for public consumption, not that there's any public on here, but regarding the tax programs, will, like last year, people got kind of grandfathered, they didn't have to apply, but will people this year for the various tax deferral or tax reduction, will they in fact have to produce their documents?
They will. So anyone who applied for state or local tax relief in 2018 is due to apply again this year. And then the tax freeze is an every year application. So all of those people need to apply this year. So we should be taking anyone who applied for the state tax relief and the town tax abatement program will have in 2018 are due to apply this year.
There is
And the
talk,
tax deferral will also have to apply?
Yes, sir. That's an every year thing. Yep.
there is talk though that there might be some sort of another executive order on this issue, but that's to be determined still.
Yeah, we're planning on having to do the 2018 people, the freeze and the deferment. And if that changes, we'll let everybody know.
Okay. All right, great.
Thank
you. Okay, Sam, emergency management.
Page 179.
Okay, so excuse me, as everybody knows, I play dual role as the fire marshal and emergency management. Although this past year, most of my time has been spent on emergency management. And Brian Kozak had taken a job in August, or actually started in October. So he's no longer with us, even though he's still listed. So if we do need him in a pinch, we could use him. So what I was considering is Bob Gahuli is going to retire this year. He's taking his hours and Brian's hours and combine them and make a full-time 30-hour a week person. And then still keep the 8 hours for an inspector in 8 hours, 8 hours a week. When you do everything out, I think the net gain is, or the net cost is only about $4,500. Because we would be starting the deputy fire marshal at a lower pay rate. So the cost of the inspector is about $11,800 a year for the 8 hours a week. And then dropping down the hourly rate for the new deputy fire marshal gives us a net gain of like $4,426 there. We still need the inspectors, we need the bodies. If nothing else is, come out of this pandemic and said, I didn't have enough staffing in there during the pandemic. And when we having some of these storms that we had, during the storms, they've ended up with a couple fires. I had to go out and investigate and really couldn't have the EOC open without anybody there to run it. And so this new deputy fire marshal position would not be involved with emergency management at all. The deputy emergency management director would be solely a stipend position of the $5,000. It's already in the budget, and that wouldn't be touched. So, that's roughly about it. I know you guys have heard my spiel about the need for the extra 8 hours before. We have approximately about 850 occupancies that we have to inspect. And out of that, there's 400 of those that have to be done annually. And the other bulk of them, probably about 300 of them are every 3 years. And with the other 100 every 2 years. So, so there, there's still quite a bit of work to be done, and hopefully our technology comes along and enables us to do the inspection reports a lot quicker. Can utilize these tablets. We're getting things worked out. If we utilize the tablets, basically when the inspection is done, the report is done, instead of having to come back to the office, look up the code and everything else. And so hopefully that'll make productivity. I forget what the revenue was last year, Stacy. It was about 5,000 that we brought in from inspection fees.
Sorry, Sam, I don't have that. That sounds approximately right, but I'm not
So
sure.
I expect we could probably increase that by $2,000 or $3,000 with the extra inspector. So questions, comments?
You came in at the perfect time of the meeting, Sam, when we're all tired
Guessing Sam will see you.
Fillmore's hungry.
and hungry.
No, I've already
I'm with you.
eaten. My Grubhub showed up.
Nice.
We were gonna cater it for you.
Sam, I'm guessing we'll see you again.
You don't have to
Saturday
pay
morning.
for that.
So Fillmore, I'm not president of the ambulance anymore.
You're not?
So I'm not going to be presenting the ambulance budget this year.
Huh. Who's the president?
Ed Wolf.
Okay.
Mr. Wolf?
Yeah.
All right, well, I think we're good. I know we've already talked about this position anyway with when it came through special appropriation. So so we'll move on, I guess, to thank you, Sam, very much.
Thanks, Sam.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
And we'll move on to the building department.
Is Vinny here?
No, but I just texted him.
Is Bill here?
Bill is here.
Do we want to go to
Yeah, let's
facilities?
get Bill, because building, I don't think there's really anything to really talk about
No.
anyways. We did senior services, so facilities.
116, Scott.
I just need my Board of Selectmen meetings to go this fast. Okay.
I'm very impressed, Peggy.
Yeah, I spent more time on Board of Finance, Gene, last night. Where were you? I think so. Bill, join us. I'm sure all you're aware that Bill has chosen to leave town and retire, taking advantage of the early retirement incentive program that we launched. And so he will be missed, but he is a vast resource of information. We actually, are talking about kind of the future of this department. I'm speaking with the superintendent about that and kind of what some thoughts are about how things might change or maybe not change, as we transition going forward with the department. So, but Bill put the budget together. Is he on?
I am.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, Bill. So I'll turn it over to you to just walk through any significant changes. I don't think there's any requests, right?
No changes.
Yep. Great, we're done.
I did see an error though in the proposed hourly. There must be a typo and I didn't catch it in time for printing. I proposed no changes in the hours of my staff and how we cover with custodials and stuff on page 116. And I was just looking at it and it looks like there's some typos in there. So it's the same people, same hours. And I apologize for not getting that correct. I'll fix it.
Okay.
Okay.
Because if you look at it closely, you'll see that it doesn't match. last year and this year.
And I think that, you know, there's a lot of wild cards with this department. Number one, obviously, is the leadership. Number two is the building town facility study. And, you know, how we move forward on that and what kind of, you know, investment decisions we make as a town. So I think right now the thought was just status quo, similar to kind of how the approach is at CIP. Let's focus on what really needs to be done right now and keep things status quo till we kind of work through some of these bigger question marks that we have. So any questions? I mean, I think Bill does an amazing job forecasting and, you know, what he needs to keep the buildings running and operating.
Billy, how many days on the slopes so far?
Not many, Fillmore. I've been sort of restricted from going to Vermont, but I've been doing a lot more at Powder Ridge every Wednesday night and a couple weekends, which I never usually do weekends. So any Wednesday night you guys want to come up, you can, we'll put you in a sled so we can practice taking people down.
Okay.
Okay. You know, if something pops into somebody's head later, we can always email questions for your workshops. But that's kind of it right now. Any other questions? No? Okay, great.
Thank
All
you
right,
for your
Bill.
time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have
Bill.
a great day. Good night.
All right. All right, wow. Next is Public Works.
Vinny is on.
Oh,
Keep the
Vinny's on.
momentum going, Peggy.
Okay.
203.
All right. We'll do Vinny, which I think is pretty, will be just as quick.
Probably even faster.
Attaboy, Vinny.
So pretty much no changes,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely no zero changes.
And you've been pretty much just so, Vinny, you know, you're able to get it, despite COVID, you've been able to keep track, I think, of inspections and, you know, be timely with everything.
No, everything's working fine, and we're actually, I think at this present time, we've already surpassed what we anticipated bringing in for revenue. So
Great.
people are doing stuff.
Nice.
And just a reminder, is the reason why the administrative assistant time is going down, is that just shared between departments and just some changes? Looks like it goes from 35 to 30.
It's been at 30. Last year we were trying to bring it up, but we got shot down. But we're keeping status quo right now.
Thank you.
All right. Sounds like we're good, Vinny. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vinny.
Nice to
Oh, no
keep it
problem.
simple. So really our last one then is Public Works.
Page 107.
Okay.
There I am. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Ready for me?
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay.
John.
So-
I'll kick it off.
All right, so it's my staffing profile here. Can you scroll there? Thank you. No, yeah, right there. So this hasn't changed in like 4 years, I guess. Just real quick, it's the deputy, it's the director, myself, the deputy, and an administrative assistant. Those are the three of us working out of the town hall building here. The superintendent of highways works out of the garage building. And then there are 6 equipment operators, 2 mechanics, 2 truck drivers,
working out of the highway garage, and then 2 landfill attendants at the bulky waste site on Ridge Road. So there's 16 employees. And the only request I'm making here is for the engineering assistant position. I requested this position to be filled last year. There it is. So I'm making another plea this year. Basically, there's always been an engineering assistant. So there's been 3 full-time employees, in this role, in addition to the admin assistant. And I really believe that this is an important position to have here to handle the sort of the daily and weekly operations that come up, like kind of on a regular basis. We have a lot of work that comes up just sort of spur of the moment. It's not necessarily planned, and we have to react to it. So, I mean, I think this department is somewhat unique in that way. And I won't read this whole summary for you, but basically these are the, I tried to outline what the engineering assistant position would entail. And, like I said, in the first paragraph here under work requests, we get like 550, and that's an average over the past 5 years of complaints or concerns that we have to go out and investigate. And that's one of the big items. And there's four other things that I've mentioned here. And, because the staff has been reduced by a third, there was three full-time, essentially engineer type positions. It's myself and a deputy director trying to cover all that work. And I think that, it's had a detrimental effect on our ability to really handle some of these bigger projects. We have multiple big projects that span over a couple of years at times. And this is interfering with our ability to do a better job. I think we could do a much better job at keeping up with the workload, the bigger projects, big infrastructure projects that I think just have lingered too long in some cases. So I'm requesting this position again. And really what this is, it's a position that was left vacant in 2016 when there were some departmental changes. The former director resigned, and so the deputy director, myself, moved up a position, and the assistant engineer moved into my position, and it left that vacancy for the engineering assistant. It made a large impact. Since I've been here, since 2007, there's always been, a director, a deputy, and an assistant until 2016 when the changes were, departmental changes were made. So that's, I can go into more detail or answer any questions, but that's what I'm requesting here this evening.
John, that's a fair request. First, let me give you a shout out to those improvements you made along Bradley Road over the summer. I walked by at least every other day just to inspect and make sure it was being done correctly, and it was. So good job. Going to the workload situation, I heard something, I'm not sure exactly where I heard it, that the police department was asking permission to take over some of the signage projects. putting up new stop signs and whatnot, which makes some sense. I don't want to get involved in that, but they are the people who decide where they go. But one of the reasons was that, I guess it speaks to your being overloaded, that it just seemed to, if they want to put up some signage in a new street corner or something, it was taking a while to work its way through your guys. So I'm wondering if that does move forward, maybe Peggy can speak to that. If that does move forward, will that lighten your load a little bit, or what?
I had just heard that just a couple of days ago that idea was being kicked around, and I was, my perspective is somewhat different. I don't see signage as being an issue or a problem for this department. That's my perspective on this. We get a lot of complaints, but getting signage done in a timely manner is not one that we get here, and not that often. And I really feel that is something, signage and evaluating traffic issues is something that should remain in the engineering department. It's, there is a lot to it. I know it seems somewhat simple and common sense, but there is a lot to it. There's federal guidelines that we need to follow, and that I don't feel is an area that we should be moving out of engineering. That's my belief on that.
So
in terms of the impact on our workload, yes, to some degree, it would lighten up the work somewhat for the work that our highway guys do. They put all the signs up, and we have equipment for that. We have hydraulic sign drivers, and they're I think they're efficient at what they do. The highway superintendent has been doing this for I think around 30 years. With the guidance from engineering, if there's some sort of new traffic issue that arises that we have to go evaluate. But it's, so it may, help it to some degree, but I don't see that being that significant.
Yes, John, it's Ken Kaminsky. So I'm sitting on the, how are you?
Good. How are you, Ken?
I'm doing well, thank you. So I sit as a liaison to the board, the police commission, and it does come up quite a bit as it relates to some of the simplistic ads for certain signage across town when they have different requests or concerns in certain areas where the police commissioners and the chief discuss and talk about where to place new signs or crosswalks, et cetera. And it is, I think it's about the reaction time and the potentially a way to try to expedite the process to go from request of sign and placement to that actually taking place. And again, not that anybody wants to, step on your toes or infringe on your turf, but if there potentially is a way to allow them to take on some of the maybe smaller projects that can get done more expeditiously, it may be by working together, it might be worth a conversation between you, Peggy, and the chief, just to see if there is a way to serve the town in a more expeditious manner, and again, free up maybe some resources on your end because of the overload that you talk about.
No, I did reach out to the chief when I kind of got feedback from the police commission meeting, and we chatted briefly about it. I think that it's more just the flexibility that if they do feel there's a need and it's not getting met in a timely fashion for their purposes, that they wanted to have the flexibility to be able to, outsource part of this, not the whole function, but just more to kind of SWAT team it, so to speak, when there was some critical community issues that they felt needed to be addressed more quickly.
Correct.
And I think for me, the question that I had raised with the chief was just more about, how much money are we talking about? And is that something that would have to impact the public works budget? And so I don't think we've gotten that far in the conversation. I think the idea here is not to spend more, right? So it's either going to be handled by the police or it's going to be handled by Public Works, but we have to have an offset somewhere to do
Agreed.
that.
Yeah, makes sense.
One other thing I just wanted to mention, John, is we had talked about rather than having hiring a full-time employee in this type of position, was there a way to look at some sort of kind of retainer type engineering services firm, so that we could draw from that when things got stretched, so that instead of having a full salaried full-time position added into the budget, to have maybe some other amount of money set aside that would allow them to tap into a firm for this, where we'd have on a contractual basis. So I don't know if you've made any progress into looking at that, and maybe came up with what, and maybe if you don't have an answer today, but what, instead of the additional budget request, maybe it's just a smaller amount of money to give you access to help when you need it on specific projects.
Just to echo what Peggy's saying, I agree with that, Peggy. I think that if we could get some more information on that, I like that idea better than hiring somebody. We just use them when we need them.
So I think getting somebody on board on retainer, or a consulting engineer, is a good idea in terms of saving us time, so that we're not bidding and going through the formal process every time. If we do this once every year or two, to get an engineering firm that we can go to, I think would save us time. But in terms of the assistant position that I'm looking for, is not really a task that lends itself well to a consulting engineer. These are responding to complaints, and we get every week, drainage complaints or sinkholes that open up and things like that, that instead of having me or the deputy go out to investigate these things, that position would do that. I feel confident that I could keep a person like that very productive every day, 40 hours a week. But as far as, I'll take any help that I can get. So if it's a matter of providing additional funds for an engineer, that would help. I'm not saying that wouldn't, but I don't think that really fits the need here. I think that's why the department was structured the way it was when I started here. It certainly would help to increase that budget, because there are projects that do lend themselves well to engineering. There are bigger designs and things like that, or a grant that we want to go after that really just very time consuming. But to me, that doesn't seem cost effective to hire for every, for things like that, to kind of pick up the slack in this department. I'll give you an example. Bradley Road, that engineering consultant, that cost us $75,000, to design all that work. And, that's just one project out of, I have a dozen projects, or more, that are pretty large scale. So that's
Well, I
my
guess
view
I
on
just
it.
didn't. Yeah, I mean, we can talk more about this. Because I think there's a lot of thinking behind how we would manage through this, and how you would use that kind of resource. But I will say that there is, definitely a need for more engineering services within the town. There's a lot of projects that don't really get moved forward or addressed because of the bandwidth of the department. So how we solve that, I think, is an ongoing conversation. And I respectfully appreciate you putting forward this as your suggestion, right? So we can certainly have more conversations about that.
Maybe you could do something part-time at first to try it out to see, so you save the money on benefits and other things, but there's a lot of discussions you can have about it at some point in the future.
Yeah, let me throw out another compromise situation. what if we got a new position that started January 1st? So it's
But eventually it'll still be the same.
do what?
You're gonna save the money for the first half of the budget, but at that point it'll be full-time after that, so.
Yeah, it'll spread that 75 hit over 2 years.
Correct.
Okay. Leave it to you,
Well, sounds
Peggy.
it sounds like Peggy's gonna look into it with him.
Yeah.
You know, again, I'd rather anytime we can save ourselves, which, you know, none of us sitting here know, but anytime we could save ourselves hiring another employee, I think it's good.
Yeah, I thank you, and thank you, John. I know you've been advocating for this for a while, and we're just trying to figure out what's the most balanced and cost-effective way to get you some more help. Okay.
Right. Yep. No, I understand that. I appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions for John and the regular budget? I know we spent a lot of time on the additional request.
Can we go to that page quick?
Yeah.
So I don't have any other requests on here. I just looked at, you know, we just got these a few days ago. I was looking at, I don't know what the 36% is. Actually, I'd have to.
That was the only thing I was going to ask you about.
That's a Verizon maintenance, John.
Okay.
What is it?
The Verizon fleet management system that we implemented. It used to be in HR and it was moved over to Public Works.
So there was a
Reduction, yes.
on that side. Okay.
Yep.
And I guess, you know, we have a new pavement study and everything that's moving forward. I'm assuming there's not going to be any major changes, at least right now, to needs for that account.
That's correct. I think we're in good shape. That we have the study in hand. You know, it's another good example. I want to delve into it and do some analysis and run scenarios on, you know, on that, but it's, you know, we haven't been able to get to it. It's kind of another example of that, something that can wait when we have more pressing issues, but you know, that there's analysis and planning that, you know, could perhaps save us money down the road.
Okay. All right. Great.
I'm sorry, Peggy. Just one more quick question. John, the equipment, is that just maintenance or is that the 124K? Is that?
That's maintenance of the equipment. That's correct.
Okay.
Mechanical work.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess we're done.
All right.
I set a record, I think.
Yeah, nice job.
Schedule.
Maybe it's just being on Zoom. Everybody's eager to go downstairs or wherever they go after the, so go, you know. All right. Well, I guess we still have Saturday, so let's try to keep the same pace Saturday if we can. And then we get more of our time on Saturday. So, all right. Thank you guys. And
Thanks,
we'll see you
everybody.
Saturday. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.